right. So, yeah, so after we go through the priorities, if anybody has any questions too, Kieran, I know that you weren't able to join our previous meeting. So if you have any questions, you can definitely feel free to ask. But what I would suggest is that we start off by each project presenting what it is that you're going to be doing, what you're asking funds for, the cost of the whole project, as well as kind of that minimum cost that you need to be able to move forward with it. And then we can continue to do rounds as we make our decisions. Would anybody like to go first? Or do you maybe take a couple of minutes to read through and think about it?
Do you want to maybe just read them out, Anna? The priorities or the.
Could we also maybe start with just a quick like 30-second introduction to who's here and what are the projects that we're looking at today?
Yeah. So I'll read through the priorities first. So the priorities are that we would want to indirectly support, we would prioritize projects that indirectly support, build capacity for, or weave coherence across other projects within the design school or across landscapes, whose focus is subcontinental or encompasses multiple bioregions and landscapes, helps people of a region to organize themselves at the scale of holistic, integrated landscapes, projects that may not have access to traditional funding sources, such as projects that are not implemented by a single organization or that weave together multiple teams and communities, projects that have potential to bring in more funding to the design school, such as a focus on bringing in new members or spreading the reach of the design school, ones that include storytelling components that raise awareness of the project within the communities it is impacting, ones that bring outside collaborators who can be woven into the design school or who can build capacities within the design school, ones that are ready to be implemented and will use the funding as soon as possible for projects that may not need to use the funding immediately. We will be offering other opportunities to join this process, so it might be best to wait to request more funding in the future. Projects that help cultivate the ability to grow into a planetary network of regenerative bioregional economies, that help to establish bioregional learning centers and or coordinate the educational processes in the bioregion, and that will be a catalyst for broader, deeper, more meaningful change. And so we can start out by who would like to share a little bit about themselves and the project that they are going to be proposing today first.
So we've got 50 minutes and we've got 3 projects, right? Mm-hmm. So should we just go around real quick and just say our name and like maybe a name for our project, and then we can allot like a specific amount of time? And are we going to try to actually allocate the funds today as well, or is that too much for an hour? That seems like a lot.
I think that's a lot for an hour. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just start off. Benji Ross here, trying to fundraise for a landscape leader retreat in Paonia, Colorado for 9 different landscape leaders, mostly from Mexicali, Mexico, and Paonia, Colorado, but also somebody from Superior, Arizona is joining us, and Anna from the Great Lakes is joining us. Represent. That's me. Thank you very much.
Maybe Claire and I can go together. I think probably most people here are familiar with our projects, but we're here today representing Regenerate Cascadia. And it's going to be an activation tour starting September 28th, running through October 30th. And then we're doing an online summit November 3rd through 12th. And our long-term vision is to weave together landscape leaders at a watershed, ecoregion, and bioregional level within Cascadia for a participatory body that can help steward a bioregional regeneration fund, a vision, and start to think about bioregional frameworks. So we're probably weaving, a lot of different people. Claire, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, so mostly I think at this stage, the people that are doing that work and sort of holding it together are Brandon and myself. And so it's really to begin, we're going to need a lot more funding to come in, but really we need some support just because we're putting in a huge amount of time, like 40+ hours a week. So yeah. And that's us, I think. That's
I can go next. I'm Kieran. Nice to meet everyone who I haven't met yet officially. Um, I'm actually working on very similar things like Brandon and Claire are just in India. We actually been speaking to Brandon quite a bit recently. Um, the I guess one of the immediate things, like there's probably 100 things that align with the priorities that Anna sent out that we're doing. But most immediately right now, we're building out like our sanctuary space in Bangalore. And we're using this as a place to like onboard people into like the grassroots movement. So like we have this thing called like the Rangers program. And it's like basically like the educational component. And we're also trying to like activate people to go out and like do green actions and like also implementing this through like this app that these other guys are making. And that's like a whole incentive structure. And it also does like data collection stuff. So we're able to get a better picture of what's actually going on in the ground. So yeah, we're just working on building out this one sanctuary first right now.
Okay, great, thank you. So now I think that it would be good to go around, I'd say 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes to discuss how your project, let's say 10 minutes for each project, how it would apply to the different priorities. And then after that, we can go back through and maybe an opportunity for comments or questions after each one. So like you can talk about it for 10 minutes and then we'll have a space for people to ask questions after each.
Yeah, that sounds good. Should I try to model this? You may try to model it. So I'm like just thinking, just to reiterate, make sure that we're on the same page, Anna. I'll talk with just a little bit more detail about what we're doing, and then I'm gonna try to in 10 minutes from there kind of go through the priorities and reflect on how the project supports each or relates to each, and try to do that succinctly. So does that sound good? And then I'll open up to question and comment. So the theme of this retreat, really what this retreat is doing in Paonia is trying to bring to life this dream of a partnership forming between the delta of the Colorado and the headwaters of the Colorado, where bioregional learning centers are forming in each, and holding the geography of the whole as like a first phase of development to really dive deep into these two places and figure out what it takes to form a bioregional learning center. What does it look like in terms of community participation, investment? How do we form the core projects within the bioregional learning center that are actually creating value and supporting core teams and getting a local economy around this forming, having energy circulating back so it can continue. And this retreat is going to be a 5-day period where 3 people from Mexicali, these really dynamic community organizers, they're powerful people. It's going to be awesome. And then Miracle from Superior, Arizona, in the middle of the basin, is going to join several of us, like probably 5 or 6 landscape leaders in Paonia. And there's going to be a Regenesis facilitator, Joel Glansberg, who's going to join us for some of it as well. And we're going to talk about what would it take to form a bioregional learning center here. And there's a lot of on the ground interest already that's ready to pop. We might have a public talk. We might do a big potluck. I think we're going to have a lot of really generative discussions. And at the end of the 5 days, we're going to have a very clear idea of where to go from there as a community of Paonia, but also as the whole Colorado River Basin. We're going to have a pretty clear idea of how the Colorado Basin scale collaborative support structure can come together and how we can learn this together and support each other. So amazing lessons, I'm sure, are going to come from this. And Anna's going to be joining us from the Great Lakes. And we've already been talking to people, to Dave Nash and to others through email about doing something similar in the Great Lakes afterwards. So this is really like what is the next step after a bioregional activation? This is an exploration of what that might be, like these landscape leader retreats to really galvanize the really important set of relationships amongst the really dedicated people across the basin or across whatever, you know, landscape feature you're organizing, but also getting really clear on the vision and talking about this bioregional learning strategy at that scale too. This is a novel thing. We're going to learn a lot there. And there's also a really big, there's a conference that's happening in Denver right afterwards, and Eduardo and Alex Korn and myself are going to go speak at that. We're going to participate in a panel. We think this is just like, I just heard about this a little while ago, like an hour ago. And we might be able to bring a lot of funding to that. And we're going to be recording a lot of what happens and doing as rich a storytelling as we possibly can. Maybe also producing a podcast episode or two out of this. So yeah, really focusing on storytelling and recognizing that for the design school and the process of bioregional activation, this is kind of an experiment out front that we're going to really do our best to learn from. And the last thing I'll say before I go through the criteria or the priorities is that Anna and I are also going to do a design lab next week, where we're inviting the design school to actually build the agenda for this retreat together. It's not till the 14th, so we could probably host like 2 sessions and also do some like asynchronous sharing of stories like through videos as well, to try to include the design school in this process, in this lead up process, as much as possible. Because I think there's a rich opportunity for all of us to reflect on this together and really get clear on what a bioregional learning center is, for one. So I'll leave the storytelling there. I'm going to just, for the interest of time. All right. As far as the first priority, indirectly support, build capacity for weave coherence across other projects within the design school or across landscapes. I think it provides a model, a learning model in many ways for other projects. Bioregional learning centers is like the central framing of the design school. I think all projects are could be seen underneath that umbrella in some way, shape, or form. So I think it'd be pretty supportive. Whose focus is subcontinental scale? Yep, definitely. Number 2, definitely. Easy. Help people of a region to organize themselves with the scale of holistic integrated landscapes. Yes. Is this helpful for me to do this? I'm happy to go through all of them. I'm getting nods. What do you think, Anna? Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm going to go through all of them. Number 4. I feel like I'm like making an oath or something. Let's see. May not have access to traditional funding sources, such as projects that are not implemented by a single organization or that weave together multiple teams and communities. I don't really know the answer to this one. All I can say is we tried to fundraise the last like 10 days pretty hard for this and raised like $200. So it's challenging to fundraise in 10 days for, especially if you don't have much experience doing it. Yeah, I feel like given more time, we could definitely find funding for this, given more time and more storytelling. I will say that. 5, have the potential to bring in more funding to the design school, such as a focus on bringing in new members or spreading the reach of the design school. Absolutely. I actually think that this is going to bring in a lot of money for the design school. I mean, we're going to really lean into telling the story and fundraising for the planetary network of bioregions. We've already started doing that. Like Joe said in the meeting earlier today in the bioregional update, like we're like 36 hours in, but our fundraising strategy has really shifted to bringing energy to the whole network. So definitely, what was that, number 6? Include storytelling components that raise awareness of the project within the communities it is impacting. Definitely. I mentioned we may have a public talk. We're definitely going to be engaging with the community on a regular basis. Marissa just sent me the idea of engaging with Dev, the guy who has the Gap Year program, and inviting his students to participate in an event with the landscape leaders. So yeah, we'll find several ways of doing that. Bring in outside collaborators who can be woven into the design school or who can build capacities within the design school. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for that. Yeah, all over the place. Are ready to be implemented and will use the funding as soon as possible. Yes, for projects that may not need funding immediately, we are considering setting clear funding times. And yeah, no, we need basically airfare, food, and gas are the main expenses, and we will spend those immediately as soon as as soon as people land and the retreat begins. Help cultivate the ability to grow into a planetary network of regenerative bioregional economies. Absolutely. That's core to what we're exploring together, learning together. Help to establish a bioregional learning center. Yeah, that's the whole point. Will be a catalyst for broader, deeper, and more meaningful change. I'd like to think so. Yeah. Okay. Questions, comments? I think that was 10 minutes.
Yeah, so I think I don't know if you mentioned the amount that you're requesting, and
No.
okay. I know that everything's really changed too. So I know that that's tough.
Yeah.
Wanna
Yeah.
like ballpark it, or like the minimum amount. I think the other thing
Oh.
that we wanted to identify was the minimum amount that could progress the project forward too.
Oh,
Brandon?
also, yeah, just sorry, just what's the general ballpark budget of what you think your expenses are that you need to do the event?
Yeah, like Anna was just alluding to, this just changed like
Okay.
2 hours ago. We decided to forego doing it in a retreat center that was going to handle all the food, but it was also going to be a lot more expensive. And we just put out the word to folks in Paonia, and I've gotten a lot of encouraging messages back that we'll be able to actually house everyone for free. So it should just be airfare, food, and gas money. There'll be trips all the way to Denver and back twice to go pick people up and drop people off from Paonia, which is about $200 in gas. Trip to Grand Junction twice. Driving all around Paonia to the mountains to projects. So I'm guessing like $300 or $400 for gas. Gas prices are pretty high right now. Food, we're going to be on the cheap. We're going to be pulling from a lot from Marissa's garden and cooking meals together. And we probably won't go out a whole lot for meals, maybe a couple times. We'll do a stone soup gathering. And then the biggest expense is going to be airfare, which I'm guessing is about $2,000 round trip for Anna from the Great Lakes, Miracle from Superior, and then 3 tickets from Mexicali round trip. So I'm guessing somewhere ballpark 2,000. So I'm thinking like $3,000, $3,500, we can make this work. And we can also, and we're also still going to try to fundraise until the day of the retreat. I'm going to be building the agenda and sharing videos of what I'm learning and reaching out to, and that'll all be a part of a crowdfunding campaign. So I hope to get 1,000, 2,000 from that. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see how that works. It's gone pretty slowly so far. But I don't want to drain this group of the whole $5,000. I want to be cognizant of that. But that is $3,500 is what I'm guessing.
Thanks, Benji.
Yeah.
Anna, I'm just curious, your perspective, or your like how you're feeling about going. Like, why are you excited about going, or why are you going? Like, what's would love to hear from you about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to go because I think that this speaks to why this will be doing a lot more than just supporting the Colorado River Basin. I'm going to primarily learn and bring back this experience from the Great Lakes, but to also to weave some relationships between the Colorado River and the Great Lakes. I think that there are very distinct separations in certain ways that we're trying to work through for the design school as a whole, but in general, we don't have a ton of collaboration across these subcontinental scales yet. So I think that me being there is one way that we can try to work on getting people to collaborate a bit more across these subcontinental scales and to support future landscape leader retreats.
I would love to just put this in here because, and it's kind of like an advice thing, but it's just, finding people like the local grocery stores or the, like even farmers market or whatever, and ask them for donations in kind. I know that's a huge amount of work. So I sometimes when we've done this, we've just put it onto a spreadsheet and seen who can go and do it. The thing about it is this, that you then engage them in the story that you're doing, and especially if they're strategically really important. And once they've donated to you, like if they're going to donate, the number of people who are like so excited about actually being part of something that is really inspiring, it carries, like there's so much that goes along with that. It's way more than the cost of all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to put that in there, that the things you were talking about in terms of costs, and then just even finding some donations. So I think just finding a list of who are people that like businesses or organizations or farmers markets, whatever, someone that you want to share the vision with, that you should be asking them for support. So
I would actually even piggyback on that to say, if you need food, it's a great, so when we had like Bread and Puppets in town, almost all of the restaurants in Seattle and stuff, if you're a nonprofit, they just have applications. We literally were just like, hey, we're hosting things, and they're like, okay, how many pizzas do you need? And we're like, like 12 pizzas on whatever, and then we just had to go pick them up, and you had to do like an online application form. And then we talked to like a local bakery that donated coffee and muffins and other things. And so definitely like just put your feelers out to local businesses and cafes, pizza places, local spots. And then if I'm sure that you got some nonprofits around there you can use, but you're welcome to abuse some of our nonprofit umbrellas if it's helpful for like getting donations and stuff. In terms specifically of like food donations, like from corporations or something.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really great advice. And actually Miracle sent me a message like an hour ago. She's like, can I just like ask some of the local businesses around here if they'll buy my plane ticket? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, sure, that certainly wouldn't hurt. And we talked about how down the road this will be a much bigger part of our strategy, is how do we support our landscape leaders to engage in the storytelling locally to build excitement, and how do we prove that we are bringing positive impact to all of these places as well? How do we tell the story of that?
maybe just one last thing is just to say, it doesn't have to be the landscape leaders that do the asking, because you're already doing a ton of the organizing work. The people who may not even be going on it, just ask them to kind of be the people. Everybody wants, they want to feel useful, and that is a good way of feeling useful. So
oh yeah, I'll give that some thought. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, since we're not trying to allocate funds today, I probably revisiting this, Benji, you and I can come up with a more concrete budget too, and ask that is more reflective of the real price before we meet next.
Yeah. Yep.
It's kind of interesting. I'll just throw this out there. It definitely does not need, but just food for thought is, this might be because there's only 3 projects and there's like the design school fund group that has quite a lot of people. It might be interesting for us to do a similar process. Like, so Edge Prize, you had this like, you made a little video submission about what the project was. But then they did a practice using co-budgeting, where everybody got like if there's 17 people, you basically divide 5,000 by 17, and then everybody was able to allocate funding to each project. And I'm not that should be used or whatever, but just as a thought, it might be a really cool practice for opportunity for co-budgeting, where we could each kind of, the 3 of us, put together video proposals, not even maybe for a fixed amount, but then the DS fund group itself could allocate funding. That does not need to go anywhere. It's just a completely random thought.
It's interesting. I've never heard it before. No, it's a good thought. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Is it? Oh, sorry.
Well, I was going to ask, does anybody else have any questions? Because I do want to make sure that we give enough time for the other 2 projects too.
I just want to say I really love the idea of a leadership retreat. I think that just finding that coherence, and I think there's nothing like being in person. So I am so excited about what's happening. I know that good stuff's going to come forth that will have an impact on everyone. So just so happy to see this happen, like in the works.
I also want to second that. I feel like that just gave me inspiration to do something similar when I get back to India, just because there's just so many people right now that we're trying to coordinate with. And
Mm.
like, I feel like putting an event together like that would, you know, kind of get everyone on the same page a lot faster than we are at the moment. So I would love to hear more about how that goes and everything, Benji.
Awesome, Kieran. Yeah, we'll do some storytelling for sure. And
Yeah.
reach out to me anytime.
Awesome.
Hey, Joe.
Hello.
All right.
Hi, everyone, especially Kieran, because I've said hi to everyone else recently.
Fair enough.
I'm playing with Elise, so I'm mostly saying hi, seeing how y'all are doing.
Doing pretty good.
Benji just talked about
Ooh, I missed it.
this.
Recorded.
Recorded.
Speaking of which, I gotta go record a daily check-in. So I'll be obnoxious over there.
All right. See you,
I
see
just
you being
agreed to
obnoxious
teach
soon.
I just agreed to teach the good behavior game to the kids at Tutumo.
Oh,
Yeah, applied cultural evolution in action. All right, see y'all. I'm gonna play with Elise and record daily check-ins.
Party on, Wayne.
Well, if it's okay, is it okay if Cascadia goes next? Just because maybe we have a hard stop, and then you guys can keep going even after that if needed, and we'll be short.
Yeah.
Yeah, bring it.
You know, I must admit that I looked at the list of everything, like all of the funding priorities, and it's like, okay, I think every single one of those is incorporated into that. So do we need to go through each one, or
Well,
I think
well,
whatever, however you want to
Yeah.
present your project to get your point across.
Yeah. Yeah, and Claire, would you like me to kind of give an elevator pitch and go through the points real quick?
why don't you do that?
Okay. Yeah, so I think, I think everybody's pretty familiar with Regenerate Cascadia, and I will also just say we don't have a hard budget or an ask, because I think we also wanted to explore. I think, like Benji said, we didn't want to drain the pot. We don't want to and so we did want to kind of come and get a feel from it. I think the most important thing for what we're looking at is that our real budget right now is probably going to be somewhere in the range of $10,000 to $20,000 without Claire and I supporting ourselves at all, right? So just for the basic costs, not paying anybody. And so, and the way that we've kind of structured our budget is that we've broken it down by activation tour, as well as the online summit. And so with the idea that we're kind of like filling costs as we go. For the actual, I think, the DS Fund priority areas, so Regenerate Cascadia. Oh, I see. So yeah, I kind of agree. Maybe I do agree with Claire. But anyways, we are absolutely working to build capacity for and weave coherence throughout the Cascadia bioregion, the watersheds and everything within it. Yeah, throughout Cascadia for all these different organizations and landscape leaders. One of the big things that we're trying to do is build a regenerative directory. Yeah. All right, I'm actually going to change my thing and not go through the list, because I kind of agree that it might be a little bit redundant, but I think hopefully it will be apparent that I think we're checking a lot of those boxes. I will say that I think the main things that we're doing and looking to fund are also things like the digital ecosystem infrastructure. And in terms of replicatability, that's a really big one that I think we really see. I think so many people are leaned in, whether it's in Colorado, the Great Lakes, Appalachia, India. And I think we're all having the same conversation, and we have a lot of the same needs. And so we really want to use this as a first opportunity for templatization, where all the work that we're doing can be directly applicable for other groups in other places. And what's nice is we're working with Sandra with the Blue Dot Project, who also Joe and Penny have been working with, and other things. And so really starting to talk about a coherent back end. So hopefully we will take these lessons learned, and then those tools will become immediately available for anybody else doing similar projects, both here in Cascadia and around the world, and in North America more broadly. And then I think the other thing is that we're also working really hard to document the lessons. Is that this is probably a fairly small mobilization, in the sense that right now we have 30 to 50 people. By the end of it, or within a month, we'll probably have more like 100 to 200 people that we're working with, and those are core organizers on the ground doing things. And so we want to scale this and scaffold it to have those tools so that we can keep the energy and momentum going, and then really lock in a lot of the lessons. So like, you know, on front door onboarding orientations, and make that available as well. And then Claire, I'm going to turn it over to you as well, to talk about
Yeah, I
things.
think maybe the main thing that I feel that it's worth emphasizing, and I mean, you've already touched on it, Brandon, is just the using each of these events as part of the long-term connecting of the networks of people and keeping that information really dynamic. That's one of the things that keeps coming up, is that the information is oh, you're sharing there.
I figured why not.
Yeah, so there was a slide actually that I put in there that has.
It's beautiful, Claire.
Oh. Yeah, so we had thought about the three different areas of focus: the watershed, which is much more on the ground, the communities there, the eco-regional governance. Oh my gosh, it's got a little scrambled there, and bioregional, which is the larger Cascadia scale level, and each of those needing to work at a subsidiarity, using the principle of subsidiarity, so that the focus is at, you know, what can't be done at the lowest level of decision making, then moves up to the next level of sort of where it's coherent. So yeah, I don't know if I know you've got stuck on reorganizing some of that, so
That's okay. I just, yeah, I don't need to drag all that around. Yeah, and then I think with the visualizing part, I think it's really is so what's cool is this is kind of already started, and there's already a few more people who've added themselves since our meeting this morning. But this is really like kind of the movement map that we're creating, where we're starting to visualize the organizers and see who's emerging, and then like we actually have the information, and even though this is a visualization, what it really is a relational database. And it's a relational database of the organizers and regenerative work happening, groups, communities, organizations, and it's people at the table. And I really do think that it is about that long-term vision for that participatory body and framework. And I think in a longer term sense, that's really what Claire and I will be seeking funding for in the future. Is there's the activation tour, there's the summit, and then there's kind of what comes later, and exploring all of those different things, starting really like themed conversations, specifically starting design labs around broader discussions around digital ecosystems, community art, bioregional governance, and kind of creating a shared vision for a watershed, for an ecoregion, for a bioregion.
maybe the last piece that I'm going to bring in is just, I know, having engaged with some of the local people here, which there's a lot of conversations around actual bioregional frameworks, and they're doing work like amongst, so there's the Saanich Peninsula Environmental Coalition that I met with yesterday, but it's coming up in other places where there is such a lock on more traditional thinking and frameworks that it feels really important to be developing out ways of being able to see new ways of organizing that aren't dependent on, say, a municipality or governing body, the traditional governing body, having to kind of get permission or get the okay from them. So yeah, really developing the that infrastructure is really important and really plays into what Brandon and I've been talking about. So,
and in terms of like traditional funding, so I think most of our funding we do want to come from the event itself, and hopefully through donations. So this will be touching hundreds of people when we actually travel through. And in terms of also like the impact of touching like physically it being in the space with hundreds of people, getting to share our vision and what we're talking about. That's also hundreds of people who will have exposure to Penny and Joe and Benji and their discussion around the design and the design school for regenerating Earth, as well as these other components. So hopefully it will be a pathway for people to lean in and get more engaged and involved at that level. And then at this point, any revenue source, not revenue source, that's not right, but like any lean in. So right now our main funding has been from the Edge Prize, and any other sources of funding help show like a vote of confidence and really help us in terms of like, as we approach other foundations, as we approach other things, it's really powerful to be able to show like kind of a multiplicity of support from different areas, different people. And so especially at this early stage, I think any support that we can receive will be really powerful for helping us in terms of our own story. And I think in the future also be able to get more funding from other areas. So I'll just throw that in there as well. And I think that's probably about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I just want to say to what Brandon just said was it's like the peer review idea of being endorsed by the people who support our work.
Great, thank you. And that is like pretty much exactly 10 minutes.
I have some questions. So maybe a question and then a comment that's coming up just like between the two of these projects. But the question is, do you have like a specific ask for this, like your, I don't know, like airline tickets or like covering, you know, a specific aspect of this for just from this particular group?
Yeah.
Is there a specific ask that you're wanting to bring?
Yeah, that's a good yeah, how about the specifics? So Brandon's pay is covered right now through Department of Bioregion, but all of this is shifting. And right now I'm not getting any coverage. So the ask was for somewhere between 1,000 and 1,600, and needing to build that, needing to get that from elsewhere as well, but just as a partly as an endorsement for the project to reflect that it's coming from the design school, but also just to start putting some money in.
Great. And something I was just thinking about with the idea of going to like farmers markets and all that you were bringing up with Benji, like this this idea of showing or of it's like this, I mean, it's the non-financial flow or whatever. It feels like the more we can do that, the more powerful this will be in terms of and making it visible. Like these farmers markets are sponsoring in a way, or sponsoring the activation tour. And so we only have to raise this much in financial capital, you know, that kind of thing. So it was just coming to me as like a link between all of these things. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think specifically, and Claire, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what would be really nice is I think in terms of a specific ask, our hope would be 1,000 to 1,600 or whatever's reasonable, but actually to help cover Claire's time for the next month, because especially this next month is going to be like all hands on deck, and Claire has already been giving probably more than like 40 hours a week, and I think it's just really even though this is not that, I think it's really important that Claire kind of gets on the books in terms of being visible in the budget, so that her work can be acknowledged by other people too. So just throw that in there. And I hope I said that okay, Claire.
It's great.
Yeah, I see you, Claire. Oh wait, we lost Penny. I'm cognizant of the time. I want to give Kieran the opportunity just to share while you guys are still here. So I'm going to make this quick. I have a question about the bioregional learning framing, because I've been, as I've been fundraising for landscape leaders and really deepening my relationship with Regenesis and exploring story of place, I kind of lost the framing of the bioregional learning centers. I mean, I didn't lose it. It was always like the umbrella But as I was, diving into these other framings and these other details, I think I was confusing people with the overall narrative. I mean, we talk so much about how we're really trying to clarify the story that we're all telling together. And then when I came back to the we're building a network of bioregional learning centers, a lot of the details that I'd been exploring really clicked into place. And so I wonder how that framing is showing up for you guys, or how, because I heard you're building this directory, this network. There's these different sense making structures that are fractal and scale linked. And have you guys gotten a clear sense of how the bioregional learning network fits into all of that?
I think so. And I think that's really what's developing. And I really like the focus of the activation tour to be building those structures. So we're letting those structures emerge, but really at that watershed, ecoregion, bioregion level. So really that idea of bringing together these groups as interconnective tissue that can help steward a bioregional fund is a very powerful narrative. And I think what Joe has been touching on, where it's like when we break down the walls and barriers in terms of like even between like funding organizations, so that like, so on Vashon there might be 10 different groups and they're all doing similar things, but then rather than each of them applying for different funds, if they can come together to apply for grants in a shared way that they've co-created, that's a little bit more of that storytelling and sense making. And I think what's nice is that we're also going to be connecting with a lot of people who are interested in hosting bioregional learning centers and developing what that looks like. And so I think it's a really nice opportunity to weave that work together in a broader picture. So Cascadia is really the niche that we're offering in terms of both. So taking work that's happening on a local scale and then connecting it with other people who are doing similar work, sharing the lessons learned, and also connecting people who might be 1 mile away or 100 miles away, and they might not have even heard of each other or be familiar with each other. And so by doing that, and I think what's nice is that, I think actually you talked about it, is we're looking for the people who are already leaned in. We're looking for the choir that's already doing the work. And those are the organizers that we're starting with. What we've realized is that this tour is really for the organizers, and it's going to be for the participants too. We're going to like broaden and open it up. But like, so the people who are doing this, they're familiar with bioregionalism. They're familiar with Cascadia. And they're excited about it. And so, and I think that that's like a really important aspect of it too. So we're not like fighting people. We're not arguing with people. It's like, people are like, oh, this sounds great. We're really excited to host Joe, like, and I think that that's really important. And it's a great place to start.
Awesome. Yeah. You guys are going to have so many repetitions. You're going to have so much practice, so many different contexts. You're going to learn a lot from that. I'm really excited.
I had stuff to answer, but I'm also noticing that in the interest of time,
Hear from Kieran.
yeah.
Yeah, I can jump in. Kind of like the other projects, I could go through every single priority and be like, yep, this is it. But most immediately, so like when Benji's talking about bioregional learning centers, like that's kind of the central framework that we're using for like what we're calling sacred sanctuaries. So each sanctuary we're working on right now is in a different bioregion, and we're having 2 more come up in one. So it'll be 3 in the same locality, hopefully by the end of the year. So each one has a different story. So like one is in the Indo-Gangetic Plain. So it's all about like, how do we do more climate resilient stuff? Like build with nature rather than against it. It's just because like I was up there like 2 weeks ago, and like my flight was like so delayed and canceled and all that, just because of the amount of landslides that were happening. Like there was just no way you could go anywhere. And it's all like a built environment problem, because like the way they're pushing out all the infrastructure projects is just not in a way that's going to last. One of the other sanctuaries where I'll be back in probably middle of next month is going to be on the coast of India, in a place called Kumta. And that one is at the mouth of one of the last free-flowing rivers in India called the Aganashini. And that project is more about like, how do we just conserve like this biodiversity hotspot that's already here, what's going on. So in the same way, we'll have another sanctuary in Bangalore, which is like an urban sanctuary. And this is like where we could probably put the funds like most immediately. The other thing is like, I also don't really have like a specific number just because like all the work that we're doing is like so continuous and like opportunistic. Like there's just things that come up. Honestly, I don't even know how we're staying afloat. Everything just falls into place, thankfully. So so that's good. But like for the Bangalore Sanctuary, that's the more the place like where we're onboarding a lot of what we're calling rangers. So it's like people like my age, younger, people that are just like fresh out of college looking for something different to do. And like most of these folks in Bangalore are very like interested in the impact and climate space. So it's just been super easy. Like we literally just pull up to a coffee shop, ask them to host an event, and we're like, hey, this is what we're doing, and we have this sanctuary that we're building right now in Bangalore, and we're doing things called like immersions. So like we basically host people and residents for like 700 a day, or like if they're staying a week, it'll be like 1,500 to 2,000 a week. This is all in rupees, so just so you don't freak out by the number. So it's we're trying to create like the urban sanctuary first, just because like that's the one that like there's already a building, there's a place for people to stay, there's a garden, and we're creating all these like regenerative systems within like the closed cycle like closed recycling component. Like we have a compost system already, like all these kinds of things we're trying to integrate into that urban environment to bring people to get a taste of what it means to live more regeneratively. And then we're using all the other sanctuaries we're building as like a place for these people to go and help, actually build them. Because where we're working in Gumta, there's no building or anything. It's just like a piece of land that we partner with like a local land steward who's like wanting to do something on this land. And we're going to be building like basically a bioregional learning center there with him. So that'll be my focus personally for like the next probably 3 months after I get back to India. But yeah, so right now I would say like the funds would most likely go towards just like paying rent for the place in Bangalore, because that's like the biggest cost we have right now, and that'll be about 35,000 a month. So what is that? About like $400. And then beyond that, like none of my team gets paid, so it would be nice to support some personal needs. Um, and then yeah, that's a little bit about it. I can go through all the priorities, but we hit pretty much every single one. And like we've been talking to Brandon too, like we're working on like the digital stuff, like the ecosystem, creating incentive structures for people to get involved. So the way we're doing that is like, to begin with, especially like in Gumta on the coast, it's like we're putting out bounties like just for like storytelling, like collecting stories, like doing that kind of a thing. So a lot of the money that comes in, like especially like from, we did the Gitcoin round just recently, so like we anticipate like all that money going straight into like supporting like bounties on the ground, and just basically activating like pockets of work. So it's very much like, I think, different in India, just because like a lot of folks like are just gonna do things if we just design it that way, because all they're really looking for is just to get paid. So it's like if we can find the incentives for people to like, be more regenerative, then, and it's a little bit more incentive than like the traditional way to do things, which is like degenerative, like they would do the regenerative thing without thinking. So that's why we're trying to use bounties and stuff, especially like in the rurals where like people are not really going to be learning about, what does it mean to have a bioregional learning center, or like all these kinds of things. So it's like we're designing the system in a way that it's just like all these things are like built in, but they're kind of just like hidden away from plain sight because they don't need to be in plain sight. So does anyone have any questions or comments? Like there's probably 100 other things I could also touch on, but
I just wanted to chime in and say, I think you touched on a really beautiful point, that bioregionalism at its root just means living in a regenerative way within the limits of a place, or adapted to that place. And so that's really wonderful that it doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be academic. It can also just be built into how things are designed. So I thought that was a nice point.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, well, the one thing that stood out to me was the youth in what you shared,
Yeah.
the priority with the youth. So I think that's really important, actually. And then just to highlight the other thing is I just have a question around how do you feel like you want to interact with like not with the design school itself, but with the other bioregion, like the other organizing bioregions? How do you feel like you want to start collaborating across the network here?
Yeah, for sure. Like just like while I was listening to all the other projects, I was like, wow, it'd be so nice if like some of the other people were also in this call working with me in India. So like I feel like we need more people just from like the subcontinent, like the Indian subcontinent, to be at like the design level. But like the only concern I have there is like even I can't really afford that just because like we're not really earning anything. And also when we are earning something in India, like me and Lamia, like to stay afloat, we do like consultancy with the USAID. So but that's paid in rupees and it's not a lot. So like doing $500 for like the design level is a lot. And just I'm thinking about like other people that I would want to get involved. I'm not certain like they would be able to afford that pay level either.
I wonder,
Um,
would any of the funding be able to go to like sponsorships for sponsoring people into the design school at all?
yeah, that would be a valid
Yeah,
thing.
that's a good idea. Also, we have
then-
one, if you could let us know the need, like the people that you actually want, who they are and the need, then that'll help because we have some that we can transfer. Or
Okay.
at least one that's ready to be transferred.
Gotcha.
So, but I like Brandon's idea too, as making that part
Yeah.
of your ask, because that's gonna open up things in India and the collaboration across the whole thing.
For sure.
So,
And I
thank
think there's a lot of people that we could also include at like the community level, just like as we start to bring in people through the sanctuaries and the ranger program. I think it would be cool to like have our like own section on the like the other bioregions have on the
Yeah.
side of the design school, so we could work that out. But yeah, I think it's just like a giant coordination problem at the ground level because like even like with the app that the guys are testing, which basically is allowing people to put out bounties for certain things, like they're just testing it out. And like in one of the places that we're working, like there's already 3,000 people that have signed up for the app. So it's just like, how do we deal with like such a large number of people that are trying to, chase after this incentive? And also like most of them are not doing it because like they have money up to offer up. It's just like this is another way that we can earn money.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm not really sure. There's a lot of I don't know, there's just a lot of people. So
So I'm just considering how to move forward with this fundraising effort that we're doing in the design school for bringing more capacity to the network of bioregional learning centers.
Sure.
And I did one update where I kind of painted the whole picture. I showed a graphic of all of the bioregional learning centers that are currently developing. Unfortunately, I didn't have any sacred sanctuaries on there, but coming very soon. But we had a specific ask for the Colorado River Basin, and then for Columbia, and I shared that around. And one of the pieces of feedback that I got was it's so nice to clearly see the need.
Yeah.
Clearly see the need to grow this network.
Yeah.
And so one thing that you could do to help me and help us tell your story to grow our fundraising, because this is gonna be a continual
Sure.
effort. We're gonna build this fundraising thing over
Yeah.
time. We made $200 in the last 10 days, but I think in the next 10 days we'll probably make more than 200. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed. But it would be super helpful if we could get like a clear story from
Yeah.
you, directly from you, or something written that we could then relay in a video. And just we
Okay.
want to get better at telling the story of the emerging network in a compelling way so people will watch, and then include in that a very clear ask, a specific number for the different bioregional learning centers and what it is that they're trying to fund. I think that could be really powerful, and we could definitely, we could cover scholarships for design
Yeah.
level members from the subcontinent, for example, and then some.
Yeah, I think that would be sick. Me, Lamia, and Sean gave a presentation about sacred sanctuaries in the design school a while back.
Yeah,
when we
yeah, I
were
was
still in
there.
India. So that covers a little bit about it, but we have like a Notion site that I can share with you guys.
Okay.
Like where we identified like the potential sites. We're doing like case studies about what's at each one, how we're building it out as a sanctuary. And then the next layer is like the digital layer, like where do we actually like get people to come in and act. And then Yeah, so this on the storytelling side of like how we're weaving together the different sanctuaries is just like we're grouping the different stories by like bioregion and everything. Did I see you guys? So like I mentioned, like we're working with like three main narratives right now. One is like the urban one is on like the conserving the biodiversity of the Western Ghats, and then the other one is like the regenerating like the Indo-Gangetic Plain. So like those are like the kind of broad themes, and then in each one there's like a different focus. So like in urban areas it's more about like getting people involved and like activating them so that we can send them to other ranger stations. In the north, in the foothills, it's more about like how do we do more natural building earth techniques and like how do we live more in that way where we're trying to develop, because there's just so much development happening and it's all just, you know, collapsing. Like they literally built like the national highway last year when I was there and it just like washed away when I was there this year. So like it's really bad. And like so many people die too because of like housing collapses and everything.
Mm.
So that's more the focus there. And then the
Mm.
Western Ghats is more about like, you know, just conserving the biodiversity and everything that is already so beautiful. Because a lot of folks down there are living with the nature. So it's more about learning how do we get people to come here, like see how to notice the patterns of what's happening, and do more of the observation, and then also start to implement those kinds of things into their own lives. But I do have like a slide deck. We have the Notion site, and I can share all of
Uh,
that.
Yeah. Penny.
One thing I just want to say is like, that you could start to think of this as like, that you're part of this bigger system now. It's like this
Yeah.
bigger support that you can give into, like if you can come to some of the update sessions or whatever, but you're gonna receive so much from
Yeah.
this network and start to feel yourself as part of it, like an us, you know?
Yeah,
And then I think that's gonna be very nourishing for you, but also for us as like a giving and receiving, and that's the whole kind of point of the design school, is the learning exchange, the like, oh yeah, we're part of this bigger thing and we're not alone in it.
yeah,
And but you're going to bring so much like a it's like Colombia, the South America is so much different than North America, but there's still ways that we can learn
yeah,
together. So just to
yeah,
emphasize that part.
for sure. I agree.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
definitely be joining the update sessions like while I'm back in the States because the timing is easier, but it's a little bit tougher with the time zone difference when I'm back in India.
Yeah.
So
No doubt.
Yeah,
No
I was
doubt.
gonna ask, what is the time zone difference from like, you're in Eastern time zone now, but what is the time zone difference?
we're like 10.5 to 11 hours depending where you
Yeah.
are ahead of you guys.
Delhi's like the exact opposite side of the world as Denver.
It's
Yeah.
literally the opposite side of the world.
It's exactly the opposite side. Yeah. Yeah.
I think we
And
thinking about that, you know, the time zone thing as we're moving forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, it would be great
yeah.
to be able to have more live events that you can participate in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just lean into geography, right? Like in what I mean by that is if it's easier to link between, and this is a much longer time frame strategy, like this isn't something that we have the capacity to do right now, but eventually we'll have more people in Europe, right? And it would make more sense for people in Europe to be, you know, weaving concepts and having conversations with people in India, because it's not as much of a strain to connect,
For
to
sure.
find times of day to connect. So that's something that hopefully we'll be able to do in the future. But yeah, we'll keep you in mind. And
Because there's actually like one guy we've been talking to who's like trying to bring back the Silk Road, but like call it the Green Silk Road. And like we have like this grand vision to create sanctuaries all along like this
nice.
Silk Road connecting like Europe and Asia again.
So
I feel like that
so
would be really cool.
that would be really, really cool. And this Saturday, Joe's giving a webinar on memes. And I
Okay.
think the sacred sanctuary is a really cool meme. Yeah, I think it
Awesome.
has the potential to spread. So yeah, catch the recording. Well, you're on the East Coast now,
Yeah,
so you
I
might be
should
able to
do it.
join.
Well, this Saturday, like I'm moving all my stuff back to my parents' house this weekend
Okay.
in Austin. So
No, it's
We'll
the next
record it.
weekend, not this weekend, but
oh,
next
okay.
weekend.
Oh, then I should be
Oh,
able to.
see, I'm throwing people off. I thought it was here. I was planning my weekend. And
Awesome.
I wanted to say as well, we are in the process of, learning a lot from Regenesis. And I think that by blending their model of regenerative development with bioregional learning centers, we're gonna get some really interesting models popping up of how within a bioregional learning center you can have a project that actually creates value, that circles back, that supports core teams too. So getting things going that enable your own economic agency and development.
we've been thinking about those too, just like with like now that we've got the urban sanctuary and like we signed the lease and everything. Like there's so many different things that we've been talking about to create like that financial sustainability like within that beyond just like the project stuff. Like I love cooking and stuff, like Indian food. So like we're trying to like create a supper club there, and where we just like have people on the weekends join the supper club and just charge a lot of money.
Right on. Well, we're friends now.
Yeah, cook for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are friends now. That's awesome.
So that's definitely lots of different like models there. So
Cool. Yeah. Can't wait to hear how this develops for you guys. And yeah, very inspired by it. I love sacred sanctuaries. It's a little hard for me to say for some reason. Sacred sanctuaries. I'll practice.
awesome.
What do you think, Anna and Penny?
Well, so I kind of wanted to get your guys' opinion on moving forward. I think that each project has a pretty loose amount that they're requesting. Brandon and Claire seem to have like the most secured like minimum of that 1,000 to 1,600. I guess what we could do is we could just try to we could start like a Telegram group and continue the conversation asynchronously, and then decide if we want to meet again next week. I feel like we might be able to make some movement, just kind of going back and forth with how we want to assign the funds that way. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I feel like, oh, go ahead, Benji.
No, after you, Penny, and insist. Yeah, after you.
I was gonna say, maybe we could sit with it for a little bit and talk about it in our little group with Joe too, and get and maybe and then just propose like the next step, the next elegant step, and like just sit with it maybe tonight and figure out a next step, and that's kind of my thought. What do you think, Benji?
I think that feels right. This feels like a sleep on it kind of thing. And then we lean into some collective intelligence, see what's coming up for everybody. And just keep the conversation open and flowing, and just keep in mind that we're trying to be really experimental here. And so that feels good to me. And then I had one piece of input on how we tell our stories and how we reflect on priorities as well, but maybe leave space for people to comment on the first thread. How does everyone feel about moving forward that way? Good.
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I was kind of thinking like, rather than just going through all the priorities and saying like, yep, maybe different projects can look through the priorities and pick like one or two or three that they're like really impacting, that they're really driving forward, and reflect on that more deeply would maybe be more compelling and be more memorable. As far as our shared strategic landscape, it might help us to see how various projects are really contributing to different aspects, rather than leaving us with a sense of like a mushy sense of like, oh yeah, it's good, I think that might be kind of powerful. Just an idea, just want to throw it out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I like that. I think that one of the things that we had talked about was that me and Penny had talked about when we were first planning this out was essentially share what you think is most important about your project to get the point across.
Yeah.
And yeah, while also holding the priorities in mind. So I think that's a nice blend of the two.
Yeah.
Cool.
This was good. I thought this was really good.
I
Yeah.
thought it was good too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad to know more about you and your project, Kieran. That's
Yeah.
a huge part of the
Yeah, I'm happy to
purpose.
be here. I think it was just a long time in the coming.
And you're in Georgia, so you can meet Eduardo and Joel Krager one of these days. They're in Georgia too.
Yeah. Well, I'm only here until Saturday.
Oh,
Yeah.
one of these tomorrows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta pack up my entire place by Saturday and then put it in
Oh.
here. So
Yeah.
And so you're headed back to the subcontinent. That's where that's your home base.
yeah, like I've just like we had like the urban sanctuary that we have in Bangalore. It's just like my team, like the core team, and then like the software guys from the guys who are making the app. So everyone like we're using that as like an experience center for rangers and onboarding, but we're also just using it as like our headquarters to save money. So it's just
Cool.
vibe house. It's
Right on.
it's a lot of fun. So I'll be
Yeah.
headed there. And then I don't really like the cities too much. So I'll be down in by the beach in Kumta building the sanctuaries over there with our on the ground partners probably sooner rather than later.
Dang, man. Well, please share your story so we can live vicariously too.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
Y'all are frozen for me, so yeah, funny way to end. It was really great to see you all. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Penny, for
Yeah.
putting this together.
Yeah, thank
Right.
you guys. Right.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
See you soon.
Okay.
Bye.